Okay, I'm going to read a paper called Black in Catholicism, which is about an African-American writer. And you would say, why is he reading a paper on an African-American writer at an Italian-American conference? And, well, there's a very pragmatic reason. It's what I know. So it's very difficult to write about what you don't know. And second reason, it's the paper. So William Motley's 1947 best-selling novel, Knock on Any Door, 1 million copies in 1 year. The story of an Italian-American kid named Nick Romano who goes from altar boy in Denver, Colorado to bisexual prostitute and low-key gangster in a Chicago multi-ethnic and racially mixed slum. It's a unique case in American literary history. His uniqueness is not that Motley was an African-American writer who wrote about an Italian-American character, because there is quite a history, actually. The specificity of Motley is that he was the first, and as far as I know, the only African-American Catholic writer to write about Italian-Americans. So my remarks today insist that to Motley, Catholicism is a non-institutionalized social-cultural form that allows him to overcome what Protestant discriminatory normativity and address the racial question in America as a question of inequality, exclusion, and lack of belonging. Motley's Italian-American investment is a reinvention of blackness as a way to experience human otherness as a signifier of inequality. This is the novel's first novelty, as well as the problem that Motley faces with today's literary critics, which for the most part seem both reluctant and unequipped to consider religion as a non-doctrinal concrete form of humanism when it comes to literary canon formation. Is the only a chance, for example, that in mainstream anthologies of American literature, there appear only two Italian-American writers, Piero Di Donato and Don DeLillo, both male, of course. Is the only a chance that neither of them is identified as Catholic, despite the evident influence that such a discourse had on them. And is the only a chance that neither of them is presented as an Italian-American writer, in spite of the fact that both are children of immigrants. Be mindful, this is not only an Italian-American issue, which is why I decided to take up Motley's novel for this conference. Motley knew all too well that he was working in the black literary tradition as a Catholic writer, the only such writer, given that Cobb McKay was a Jamaican-born. And that tradition had already dealt with Italian presence. It's found in modern texts, which is Jane Weldon Johnson, the autobiography of an ex-colored man. Likewise, in Sterling Brown's poem Harlem Happiness, we have the cohabitation of two couples, one black and one Italian-Americans in the street of Harlem. And a year before Motley started writing Knock on Any Door, William Hathaway had created a pro-Italian encounter between African-American and Italian-American male workers in the steel mills of Pennsylvania. In other words, Motley is at once inheritor and shaper of a literary line that connects African-American male writers to Italian immigrants and their children. It is not a coincidence, I think, that Frederick Lafayette reaches out to Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man when he defines Italian-American as invisible people. Knock on Any Door, however, gives the first fictional Italian-American youngster that an African-American writer has ever created. Motley was well equipped to do so because in the late 30s he had conducted a study of an Italian neighborhood in Chicago for the Federal Reserve Project, a study called Little Sicily, a 38-page manuscript written for the Illinois American Guide series, to which I return at the end of my introduction. The influence of this WBA fieldwork informs the structurally defined geography of the novel, beginning with its center urbanism. Unlike Hathaway's book On the Forge and Ellison Invisible Man, Knock on Any Door does not go north. Nick Romano and his family, in fact, withdraw from the West. This is to say, the immigrant family withdraws from the frontier, a symbolic shadow of the American dream, due to the economic failure of the grocery store, which first forces the Romanos to move to the ghetto of Denver, where Nick's downfall begins, and then to relocate to Chicago. At the same time, by selecting an Italian-American as main character in place of an African-American, Motley avoided a seemingly mandatory northward migration of black writers. By withdrawing the Romano family, Motley renounced the narrative possibility that the frontier has always offered American writers beginning with a book from which all American literature, modern American literature, comes from, as Hemingway told us, which is Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Yet my view is that Motley did not ignore these two thematic traditions. Rather, he reformulated them to what I call the invisible blackness of Italian Americans, the racially inflected protean dimension of immigrant humanism that allows Italian Americans to navigate between different racial realities, broadly conceived, by which I mean a notion of race that is not limited to a solely color-based dimension. This is why Motley locates Nick Romano at the center of a multiracial, multi-ethnic, and multilingual proletarian street, Maxwell Avenue, where one can hear, quote, men and women shouting their wares in hoarse, rasping voices, Jewish words, Polish and Russian words, Spanish, mixed up English, and once in a while you heard a chicken cackling or a baby crying. The smell of hot dog, garlic, fish, steamed table, cheese, pickle, garbage can, mold, and urine smells, end quote. No wonder that Nick's Romano Italian Americanism is primarily linked to race. The reason, of course, is that Motley was not an Italian American, which incidentally raises the question of what exactly is an Italian American novel, and conversely, what is an African American novel. But this is precisely what makes Nick Romano an interesting fictional character. Motley may not be a first-rate writer in terms of aesthetics and language execution. Ideologically, he moved progressively to the left after the end of the New Deal and at the onset of the Cold War. Stylistically, he found himself caught in between the end of modernism and the first pangs and postmodernism. In other words, he's a transition writer, but one who's extremely astute. This is how he described Nick Romano's hair. I quote, he put water on his hair and stood in front of the mirror, commenting, it won't stay down, it's too curly, end quote. His too curly hair is one of the many ciphers of Nick's invisible blackness, which Motley ties to his Catholic upbringing. In the reform school where Nick is sent after he covers up the misconduct of a friend, Nick cannot bring himself to say the N-word when he's asked to help another boy to wash the school's director's car. What happened to the Nick asked the other kid, meaning the African-American boy with a scared-to-death look in his face that Nick tries to approach before Big Stop. The racist and fascist-like dog of the school stops him to warn him, I quote, we don't talk to no niggers in here, end quote. Clearly, Nick does not feel that Big Stop personal pronoun we includes him. Neither does he feel that he belongs to that we. Just as Nick increasingly becomes aware of his invisible blackness, so does his yearning for belonging with the other side. Right after Big Stop born, Nick witnesses the school superintendent whipping Nick's friend Tommy, who attempted to escape from the school along with other kids, including Sam, the African-American that Nick intended to talk to. Nick gradually identifies with Tommy, who refused to submit to the Victorian normative laws of the reform school, including its racial divide. Tommy is the exact opposite of Baxter, to whom defiantly responded, I'll talk to anyone I want. When the kids who attempted to escape are brought back to the assembly hall, Sam sits next to him. Then Tommy is forced to pull down his pants, his buttocks naked for everybody to see, while the superintendent does his job with his strap. Quote, a smack of the whip again, cut in the flesh, bringing the blood, end quote. Now, in the hands of an African-American writer, this image acquires a precise double meaning, the literal one of the text, and the allegorical one of African-American history. An injury to the body is what fuels mutual recognition. Although Tommy's a white kid, Motley was not. And it's right after Tommy's whip and the Nick turns against everything that the reform school stands for, beginning with the crossing of the racial line, as he starts hanging out with Sam, the African-American kid, which eventually will force him to fight and be picked up. Neither does Nick accept the mission of the school that its director, Mr. McGuire, perhaps not coincidental a Scottish name, sums up as follows, quote, good habits, personal cleanness, honesty, obedience, cooperation, respect for property, and the use of clean language, end quote. Nick's hostility to this universe is not a naive juvenile revolt against the authority. Nick rejects this principle because the school's mission is accompanied of Puritan discipline, the founding principles of capitalist system, and bourgeois respectability. In one word, whiteness. And whiteness does not belong to Nick Romano, the Italian-American kid whose hair is too curly. The whipping of Tom is an indictment on the nation's past, as well as the cipher of capitalist repression that is unleashed against the unprotected, the weaker, those at the margins, the excluded majority. This is what Nick reacts to, the bourgeois modern world of white Protestant respectability, of which the reform school is a microcosm. In proper modern fashion, Nick becomes a display subject of modernity that continuously attempts to invert its position and become a subject of a new modern world in ethics, which the passage of the plural microcosm of Chicago reflects. Belonging, finding a home in his work. This is what Nick strives for, to no avail. The modern world that Nick Romano faces for him a double estrangement. Not only does he live during the Great Depression, unlike the children and immigrants of Mama and Lego, for example, and other Italian-American literature at the time, Nick does not inhabit two different worlds, either. The Italian at home and the white American outside at school. He inhabits neither. What he inhabits instead is a fictional universe that Motley imagines for him, the multiracial, multilingual, poor, sexually promiscuous neighbor, rotting with filth and crime on Maxwell Street. One, however, that includes a carnival street with a black orchestra and a racially mixed crowd during which, quote, a lean young Negro black as the hat he wore came out of the crowd and asked a pretty Italian girl in her teens for a dance, end quote. An invitation that the girl accepts. In this world, Mediterranean respect stands as both other than and opposite to the world of the reform school, to whiteness. Nick Romano is the ideal fictional character to build such world, because his invisible blackness keeps race and ethnicity simultaneously in play, as he gradually descends in the underworld of West Madison, where there are, quote, foreign appearing men but lighter than the Italians, end quote. Motley's original inspiration for Nick Romano was a Mexican teenager whom he had met in a reform school in Denver. The Italian-American choice, then, is both Motley's intentional way to address whiteness without falling in the typical black and white binary. This is clear when a cop stops Nick and his friends, Vito, Stash, and Sleepy, the latter an African-American, to ask this following question. To question their different nationalities. A question to which Nick replies, "There ain't nothing in this country." The response operates at two interconnected levels. To begin with, Nick reverses the position of the power relations between the institutional authority that speaks whiteness and the subaltern who have only their identity in each other. His questioning the policeman momentarily subverts the agency of power in its relationship, creating a positive shared space for the mutual recognition of their universality as the condition of equality and freedom that the addition of "in this country" to Nick's sentence underlines. Secondly, Nick subverts the idea of racial hierarchies, which he subordinates to the concrete practice of inclusion. Nick knows that inclusion is the precondition for everyone to be seen and belong, the public recognition that guarantees the possibility to make oneself feel at home in the world. It is, of course, Motley's strategy to raise the question of social inclusion, which in this country, as Nick says, cannot be detached from the question of whiteness. Underneath the skip-row verbal codes, the strictly theoretical presupposition, it raises many political questions, because the racial inclusion that Nick's invisible blackness fosters validates everybody's singularity as universal and the assemblage of white normativity. Motley's investment in an Italian-American teenager took early her response to this politics. Moreover, although Motley shows how poverty is the fuel of crime, he does not sanitize Nick Romano. Unlike stereotypical Italian-American gangster, Nick trusts people outside his own ethnic group and culture. The most important difference, however, is the aesthetic difference that betrays his invisible blackness, his obsession with his law, that his signature mark sentence immortalizes, quote, "Live a good life, die young, and have a good-looking corpse," end quote. The sentence may be catchy, right? But the message is clear. Beauty transcends even death, the essence, culturally speaking, of Catholicism, at least ever since Dante's Vita Nova. By transcending death, beauty rejects the continuous attempt of the word of whiteness to control, to frame Nick, to not see him and all those like him. In other words, Nick Romano is the original invisible man, not because of the cliché attached to him, but because nobody sees his invisible blackness, his Italian-Americanness, his popular Catholicism. Literary critics to begin with, As an Italian woman was family, the Chicago Housing Authority wanted to relocate elsewhere in the city, told Motley when he was collecting material for this WPA essay as to why she would have moved, and I quote, in Finnish, "We ain't gonna move. They don't want us in there.